I'm sorry, Director, you may have to start all over. Or STL TV was that?
It's streaming now. It wasn't before, but
Will that?
if we have recorded, if we haven't recorded, we can always post it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So for the individuals who are online, we sorry for the technical difficulty with the stream. So today is the Budget and Public Employees Committee. For folks that are watching, we are we have Board Bill 1 on hold. We have various committee discussion right now. We're hearing from CDA. We will hear from the Circuit Court. We will hear from SLDC. We will skip supplies that will be in front of us tomorrow, excise, and then the committee will have a conversation on police board of commissioners. So far, the CDA director has kind of done an introduction of CDA, the history of it, just celebrated 25 years,
52.
52 years, and talked about their fiscal team, their housing team, their compliance team, and their housing team program. We're actually not that far into the presentation, so for folks, again, you can be able to go back and watch it here shortly, but this is probably the third slide that just talks more deeply about the work that CDA is doing. And in front of us, Director, if you can just introduce yourself again and introduce people you have in the room, and then proceed again with your.
Sure. I'm Matt Moak, the Interim Director of CDA, and with me I have two CDA personnel today, Brian Yacht, our Chief Financial Officer, as well as Kevin Ellison, who's my prime administrative support person. So we had been talking about this slide a little bit, just illustrative in terms of give people an idea of the committee and others what area median income sort of means in relation to spending HUD money in the community, and you get that's across the top, of course, illustrates the families, and then the income limits in the various categories: low, very low, and extremely low area median income guidelines that we need to adhere to adhere to HUD requirements. Next slide, please. We tend to zero in on rental house, and I'm going to come back to CDBG and home just a little bit and talk about some of our successes with them over the last year or so, coupled with ARPA funding. Next slide, please. This is still about home. Many of you, I'm sure most of you know about the low-income housing tax credits issued out of Jefferson City every year. The key for our community, and we wish we would get more awards from Jefferson City in this regard. But home is, we use that quite a bit to close the gap on some of those projects, so which would help them, be more attractive for a LIHTC award. It's something home is commonly used for. Much like CDBG, the home funds are also, we have a compliance period where we monitor those funds to make sure that the units that we're creating are affordable and they're in sufficient condition for HUD purposes. Next slide, please. So back in 2022, we received, it's different than our traditional home housing funds. It's called Home ARP. ARP represents ARPA. And there was Treasury made an award through HUD of Home ARP. We also received back in 22. I want to say it was around $4 million. We used that to supplement housing production, which again, I'm going to touch on just in a minute here in terms of some of our numbers. But it is also targeted to situations that sprung out of COVID and had to do with our unhoused population or people at risk of being unhoused. I mention it here because we have to obligate Home ARP. We don't have to spend it, but we have to obligate it by September 30 of this year. So we're down to our last 1.5 million, and if you go to the CDA website right now, you will see an outstanding NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, for the remainder of our Home ARP. It's open until June 5. The idea here, it could be rental assistance, it could be assistance to those categories of individuals that are listed on this slide, but that's our focus, is support in that area, and we will do so sometime after June 5 when the NOFA closes. Next slide, please. So this is something I put together over the last year to give people I presented to your committee an idea of what we have done in the area of affordable housing in a roughly 1-year period. And I'm very proud of this slide. I think that probably it has set a record in affordable housing production for our city, and a record that may be very hard to eclipse in future years, and that's because of the right section over there where you see 45% of it is tied to ARPA funding, which of course will be going away after this year. But over on the left, let's break out, we produced 465 affordable housing units last year alone, over 14 million in amount spent on that, creating both single family homes at 80% or less area median income and rental units at 50% or less. Obviously the focus there, you can see there's more rental units than single family homes, but be that as it may, 465 units, and I'm extremely proud of this. Next slide, please. Back to the formula funds. So we have 4 categories: CDBG Home. We also have HOPWA funds, stands for Housing Opportunities with Persons with AIDS. We have $3.3 million awarded to us in 26 for this category, and you can see the slide is designed to assist low-income persons dealing with HIV or AIDS with obtaining housing and other supportive services. We administer this through the health department, and for the most part, our money in this area goes to Doorways. I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and Peter Paul Community Services as well. Next slide, please. Our last category of federal funding, Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. This is at $1.55 million. This is an amount that we work with the Department of Human Services to get out on the street. And again, we're targeting that unhoused and vulnerable population, and what we can do to assist there through human services. And we've always had very good luck with working with them. Next slide, please. So this is a question I get quite a bit because the nature of our government in Washington, D.C. is, are your federal funds being decreased or more vulnerable, if you will, and declining over time because of the current environment in D.C.? And the answer, thankfully, is it's not dramatic. So what I put together here when my first tour of duty in 2021, across the top, CDBG Home, HOPWA, and ESG are federal funding, and then below that, 25 and 26. And then at the bottom, sum it up. Our CDBG and Home has decreased, but on the flip side, our HOPWA and ESG has increased. So overall, from 21 to 26, we're down the 822,322 number, which, I'd rather that be even or be increased, but it's not in the millions. And I think, it takes some comfort in that at this point. Next slide, please. So the budget. I'm sure, as you're all aware, our Board Bill 1 budget for CDA is strictly limited to admin expenses. It does not include our federal grant awards or ARPA funds. The real purpose it exists, the BB1 budget, is to provide personnel with an E&A approved personnel schedule, so our people are part of the civil service system like other city employees, and we need to be of record with our personnel costs in those positions with personnel. But I can't stress it enough, the we are not dabbling one dime in the 1010. So in your materials, I'm going to point this out. If you have, I'm sure you probably have this page in your materials, and it's also on the website. There was actually a miscategorization of the categories on the left where it says grant and other funds, and then down below where it says economic development sales tax. Those two categories are flipped in the material that's currently out and viewable to the public and others. So I've fixed those here essentially. Now the first one essentially just being a total down, which again is our personnel costs, and the other miscellaneous run the office cost to total to that grant and other funds line. And then the economic development sales tax, which is a special tax, so it does receive a portion, is added at the bottom. So at the bottom of the slide, I don't really want to speak to 25 because those numbers, to be honest, I'm not even sure what, they don't make sense to me. I just left them there. But 26 and 27 do in terms of the personnel cost and the number of positions which appear at the very bottom. Last year we had 64 positions on our TO, and this year we're down to 60. Next slide, please. So this is something that we're starting to analyze as I stand before you today. But we have 60 approved TO positions. Of those 60 positions, only 44 are currently occupied. So it's 26 and change percent vacant. Of those 16 positions, personnel just presented this to me last Friday that we're in the top 3 for vacancy. But honestly, that's not my concern. The vacant positions aren't my major concern at this point. I wouldn't want our personnel budget number to go down, but I think what we have to look at is a lot of our people are partially funded with ARPA money. And the ARPA money is going to go away in 2026. And in theory, those people are subject to budget layoff. I would rather avoid that scenario. I can't stand before you say I have the answer to this right now, but there is some feeling because of the large amount of vacancies at CDA that we might be able to move some of those people into a funded position that is non-ARPA. Next slide, please. Just a picture of our TOs. It exists right now. I won't belabor it. It's kind of hard to read on the screen, but essentially the groups, the areas of CDA that I talked about, I came down on December 1 of 25, and since that time I've shored up the Director of Housing and Housing Programs positions internally. I was not a dramatic money hit to the budget there, but we had lost a long time Director of Housing, Bill Rata, to attrition before I got down there, and we needed leadership there. And I mean, at the top right, you can see those two positions. Brian's position in fiscal is to the right of that on the right side. And then we have our compliance section on the left, and then an open position right now that mainly oversees environmental review and what will hopefully become a stand-up and rollout of our CDBG DR program. Next slide, please. So I just want to spend a few minutes on Healthy Home Repair. One of our continuing successes at CDA, and I just want to shine the light on it briefly, and I think you will find it somewhat interesting. Obviously, the mission of the Healthy Home Repair, I'm sure you all know. In 2025, we completed 158 projects in this area. Can I go to the next slide? These is by fiscal year, these expenditures, but you can see how they, between our various funding sources, which I've touched on, CDBG Home, Healthy Home Repair includes lead, ARPA, and then the total amount that we spent on healthy home repair across the last 4 fiscal years. If you just look at the total, you can see how in 2022 it was 2.1 million and change. And then starting in 23, mainly due to the insertion of the ARPA funding, it increases fairly dramatically. Once it increases up to 5.5, 5.6, it's obviously stayed there. It's been level. And so I just want to shine the light on that a little bit. Next slide. This slide's probably the most interesting of all in my mind, which is we looked at the last year. This actually goes back to Q1 of 24, and we are tracking the number of homes that have been repaired in some capacity through our Healthy Home Repair Program. And they were 229, but what you will note if you look at the graph is Q3 of 25, or roughly what, July, what is that, September, July, August, September of 25, the number ramps up dramatically. And obviously we know why. Because if you look at the map on the right, you can see in the tornado zone quite a number of homes that were addressed over this whole period, but certainly during the spike in the numbers that you see there in Q3. Next slide, please. Actually, that is all the slides I formally wanted to present today to this committee. I would be happy to entertain any questions, of course.
Thank you, Director. In order of seniority, Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, Mr. Moak. Good to see you here and appreciate the presentation. Give me a second while I flip back here and get my questions. So start with the positions that you mentioned that are vacant, and you said you're not particularly concerned with filling them because some of those are funded from American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and you're concerned about those positions being eliminated in the future. But I know CDA is one of the departments that had a higher ARPA balance that needed to be spent down. Without filling those positions, is there a concern that some of those funds that may have been for those positions might go unspent?
I think we're pretty confident that we will spend down all of our administrative or payroll costs. Those are already, they're sort of calendared, if you will. They're not contingent out in the community on a project or with a construction project, you know, what have you. So our feeling is we'll be 100% spent down on payroll. And if I could clarify on that a little bit too, Alderman, I think the vacant positions that are in RTO, or they're in RTO, they exist there, they could be filled, are not ARPA funded. They're not ARPA funded, but we have occupied positions that are partially ARPA funded. So the feeling is we might be able to do something there. We're still analyzing it. I think we're going to have to consult with personnel and the law department as well in terms of what we can really do there.
So you're saying you have people in the kind of the ARPA positions right now, but you'd be able to move them over to some of these vacant positions after ARPA ends?
Sort of the loose gist of it, yes.
Okay, just want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Healthy Home Repair Program, I think this is a program a lot of us care a lot about, and certainly one that is helpful. But you know, we've heard of long lists of people, you know, waiting a long time. And certainly, like many city departments, we know there's just having money doesn't mean you can get it out the door super quickly. But I was looking at these numbers that you had in this chart. Obviously, the incredible increase from 20,773 to 3,212,795 in 2023. That's the slide. Thank you. And then it just kind of maintains at you know, almost 4 million and then another 3 million in 2025. Is that anticipated to drop after ARPA is expended?
Well, of course, the ARPA, you see the ARPA contribution coming across there, and that will not be there. It's hard. I would expect probably the number of homes that we're able to repair would drop because of that, yes. To address your first point, though, in terms of the waiting list and in terms of the slowness of the program, I mean, there really this program started in 2007, I believe, and really ever since its inception, there's been more demand than there's been supply. You know, it's just something that we deal with. We work with a critical partner, Mission St. Louis, and they're moving as fast as they can, and we're very proud of our work with them. But I don't know of a way necessarily to make it move faster.
No, I can understand the
Yeah.
the difficulty there, and I'm certainly not criticizing. I think
Yeah.
it's more just that from our side, we hear about people who are on the list and waiting, and we know that limited capacity just kind of puts a bit of a bottleneck on these funds. Similarly, we've heard from the recovery office that the Healthy Home Repair Program was not something that could scale up to the degree that it needed to in order to address the great need caused by the tornado. Is that an opinion you share, or what was your experience coming on? I know you kind of came on in the middle, so you're not responsible for what happened before you, but you, from what you've seen, what were the weaknesses of the Healthy Home Repair Program that the recovery office had to set up a new program in order to get some of these tornado relief dollars out the door?
Sure, and I can comment on that to some degree. First of all, I will say the Healthy Home Repair, I mean, our average cost is around $29,000 per home, and where we're going with that money is trying to keep people in their homes, but it is not, for example, replacing a whole second floor blown off by a tornado. You know, a Healthy Home Repair Program is just really not designed or meant for that. And I think that's the first point that has to be understood, because it's beyond our scale, some of the damage that we've seen, of course, in the tornado zone. And really, it just wasn't practical that we were going to be able to reach that level of damage. But we did continue to operate in the tornado zone and other parts of the city as well, of course, to the tune of $28,000 or so per house on average, to keep people in their homes. So that's kind of an apples and oranges type of analysis. But the other thing that happened that has gotten some attention is when I came down, we had $5 million in RAMS money that had been sent over to CDA to assist with home repair. I don't know the background on that so much, you know, how that occurred, but I do know that we undertook an analysis as soon as I walked in the door, and I just said, how much of this $5 million can we spend at CDA over, say, the next, year or so? And we concluded that amount was $2 million. So rather than have that $3 million sitting there and the recovery office having this tremendous need for funding, we moved $3 million of the $5 million back to the recovery office. That's received some criticism, which honestly I don't really understand, because in my mind, we were still going forward with our $2 million, but also in theory, the recovery office is taking the other $3 million and going forward simultaneously with us. That's how I looked at it, as sort of a balancing and putting the money where in theory it would be spent the most efficiently and move forward into the community. So there's been a little backlash about that, but I still stand by that decision. I think it was the right thing to do.
Thank you. That's a really helpful answer. I'm curious about. I think with the American Rescue Plan Act money, we obviously have this deadline, and we have to get that money out by that deadline. And so CDA has been in the position of receiving a lot of that money, but needs to get it out the door. Otherwise, we have to send it back, and it doesn't help anyone. So I look at the approach you took there, looking and saying, how much can we actually spend this year? And figuring out that no, we cannot spend the full 5 million, and so we want to be able to get to somewhere, get it to somewhere that can be spent. So that makes perfect sense to me, and I agree. There is definitely a narrative out there that perhaps this program could have just been spun up and produced more, but I appreciate you shedding a little more light on that.
I just think we had to use, sound judgment at that moment in time, which hopefully will prove to be correct as we go forward. But in my mind, that made total sense to me. There's others, since you mentioned the ARPA funds, and they're spot on. I mean, we're still completely obsessed with getting those funds out the door. But one of the things that we ran into in the ARPA area, we had over $4 million that had been pledged to a program called Building Stabilization, which is not a program really anymore. It had to do with Stable Communities program. It was dismantled early on under this administration. But the over $4 million was sitting in that as well with ARPA funds that we were not going to be moving. And so I also moved that through ENA over to the recovery office. To me, that accomplishes two things. It beefs up the recovery office being able to ramp up and get going, but it also gets it off the CDA books so that in theory, the Treasury doesn't come and ask for it back. So it's similar in a way. I think the analysis for me was similar in a way to what we went through with the Rams Healthy Home Repair money.
That's helpful. Thank you. Well, that's all the questions I had. I really appreciate you being here and presenting. And at this time, I'll pass it on to my colleagues. So next in the order of seniority, I don't think is it you or is it Alicia? Oh, yeah. Alderwoman Saunier.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Hello, Director Moak.
Hello.
Thank you for being before us today. Thank you for all the work that you all's department does. I know you guys are quite busy right now with what is going on with ARPA and all of the other things. I wanted to, you indicated in your presentation just kind of that vacancy wasn't your concern, but rather positions that will run out from ARPA. Do you mind, do you have a count of which positions specifically are funded by ARPA and how much they were funded by ARPA, like whether or not they were partially or fully funded?
Yeah, I don't have that detail, Alderwoman, but it's mainly because a lot of our ARPA hires were brought in and might have had worked on a program that could be funded by CDBG or one of the other funds, and then we would partially fund them under ARPA. And I think that it's not like I can say I've got 12 positions that are 100% funded by ARPA, because that's not the reality. And we haven't gotten down and done the math. And of course, we need to do that. Our focus right now is getting the money out the door. So rather than try to
Because those staff are going to have to transition when? If
what?
Those staff are going to have to transition by the end of the year, right?
Yes, yes.
Do you know how many positions you would have to, in the budget that you would not exist anymore without the ARPA dollars? Are there any positions that would have to be fully cut?
It's projected at 18, I think it's 18.9 positions that are affected at least partially by the ARPA funding. I have 16 vacancies.
Okay.
And it's just, I know this sounds rudimentary, but this is how I'm approaching it right now. If I have 16 vacancies, 18.9 to fill, obviously I'm short a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't have I mean, we're going to.
So is your hope that maybe some of the positions that are funded by ARPA can maybe like transition to other vacant roles within the department?
That could always happen. And I mean, I'd like to, if to the extent I can do a lateral transfer, which is really what I'm thinking about at CDA, well, yeah, we've got a lot of good people that were hired under ARPA. But it also, of course, it's known to them that they were hired under ARPA, and they may be looking at positions in the city. It's hard to really predict what the future holds there. But I'm just trying to be conscientious about it.
Yeah, just I know there's similar conversations happening on the SLDC side because of
yeah.
those transitions, and my main concern is just wanting the staff to be able to get adequate notice to prepare for endings. I know a lot of them were told when they were hired that, your position is relation to ARPA, but I know we're having those conversations on the SLDC side about what it looks like for them to be able to have a graceful next step, whether that's internally or externally, and making sure they get enough notice to make arrangements,
Right.
especially in this economy.
SLDC is a little different because, of course, they're not operating under the civil service system like I am.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I did mention, didn't mean to mention during the presentation that I did not, is anytime you're dealing with civil service employee, I think it's going to be very prudent of us to consult with personnel and perhaps the law department as well in terms of what our options are and what we can and cannot do with those civil service employees. And so I intend to do that as well. SLDC doesn't have that issue.
Do you know, well, we do have other issues in that case, like lawsuits and things that the Civil Service Commission does kind of put a layer of protection in, so pros and cons. Prior to ARPA, do you know what was considered fully staffed for CDA?
How many vacancies, you mean?
Or, yeah, just, obviously there's some positions that came into existence to execute the ARPA programming, but prior to that, what did fully staffed look like?
Boy, that's a good question.
Steady at around 32 positions, and now we're at 44.
Yeah, I want to say 44 would have been our number, but you're
Right.
saying.
But prior to ARPA, it was pretty steady.
You got to talk into the mic so the public can hear you, unless Mr. Moak is going to repeat everything you're saying.
Yes, sir. So we need you to come on, if you can come up and either speak into the mic and introduce yourself
If you're,
so that the public can hear the conversation to be transparent
thank you.
as you guys figure it out. And just speak into the mic, so get up on it.
Okay, no, I think
And can you state your first and last name?
Brian Yocum, I'm the CFO at CDA.
You said Brian?
Brian, B-R-I-A-N, Yocum, Y-O-C-H-U-M.
Okay.
And no, I think prior to ARPA, our steady staff at CDA was right around 32 to 34 positions. And then with ARPA, we've maintained around 44, and it comes and goes. But I'd say we've picked up another 10 to 12 on a steady basis with ARPA.
Understood. Mr. Moak, this next question, I don't know if you've had a chance to look into, but there are obviously a lot of conversations right now about community development block grants, disaster recovery funds, and in most of the municipalities, it would be CDA-like or CDA-adjacent departments that would absorb those funds if we were to get them. Do you feel that if we were to be granted some of those community development block grant disaster recovery funds, that your position and your staffing, you would have what you need in order to, successfully receive those funds and allocate them out?
The answer is no. I think we would have to beef up staffing. And I have some experience with this already because we currently have a CDBG-DR program for the flood at 22. That HUD is pleased with where we are with it, but to be honest, I feel like it should be more stood up and more active than it is right now, but we're working on it. But the reality is when that money came in from HUD, there was a feeling we should be adding like 8 or 10 people to help administer that program. We haven't added anyone. And again, it's no indictment on anything. It's just, I think if we're still talking about DR funds for that program, which I'm just trying to work people in and get done, the flood program based on current staffing. But if we were talking about a new DR program, we'd have to beef up our staffing.
I think that's good to note. Could you talk to us in general? Obviously, there are a lot of conversations about CDA. You guys do a lot of work related to housing and things of that nature. What are some of the biggest barriers that you're facing right now as far as processing contracts and payments?
We have a lot of real estate contracts, obviously, that require wet signatures. We're not DocuSign tied as much as other departments may be. So when we made the move in the new comptroller system to essentially electronic contract transfers, if you will, there was a period of adjustment there that we're still climbing out of to some extent in terms of how that new system can facilitate our real estate documents, what we'll call wet signatures, through the system. And it's taken, we're in our 4th month or so sort of working out those kinks. I think that's the main setback that we had over my 5 months down at CDA so far, but otherwise I think we do a pretty good job with the contracts through the system.
Do you have a timeline right now for CDA's housing production NOFA? And just for some context for the public, CDA usually awards important leverage for LIHTC funds. Applications for LIHTC are usually expected to be due in August of the year, and CDA funds are usually the most significant way because they usually serve as additional matching funds that applicants can show to say, hey, we have the financial backing to really pull this project off. Last year, the CDA round of funds was not fully awarded, and only one LIHTC award went to a city project, which was Parkview Apartments.
Right.
And in addition to serving as crucial leverage for like MHDC directed funding, CDA funds also provide, gap fillers for already awarded but difficult projects to gap, which everything in the affordable housing space at this point is difficult to gap. And, there is an affordable housing production nonprofit that relies on the NOFA that is facing federal gaps on current projects. And so if there is a CDA housing production NOFA that can be applied, those projects usually come close within the next few months and, can make things bring about. I think this is something that's really important to the 7th Ward as someone who wants to make sure that I'm able to continue to maintain an affordable housing stock to complete with our private market and keep us, an economy that has housing for all of us. But it's also really important citywide. I know there are numerous CDCs and numerous nonprofit projects that fit into this boat, and I know there are usually sometimes over 1,000 MHDC awarded affordable housing and waiting production, and it's a significant priority. So just wanted to provide that context for folks who are watching and just curious about what this is, that CDA. This is something that CDA makes available that we put out, and then usually there's something that almost any and every affordable housing developer within our city to apply for to show as leverage as they go after these other funds. And so I just wanted to check in with you, Mr. Moak, on our timeline for that housing production NOFA and just clarify that it usually does go out around this time, correct?
Yes, right. The tornado threw us off by a year on our housing NOFA. We did a 25 NOFA, which we're essentially awarding now, and the reason it's being awarded so late is because of so much of our effort was dedicated to tornado recovery in late 2025. So we're sort of missing a year, meaning that we anticipate awarding the 25 NOFA shortly, and then we anticipate putting out a new spring NOFA in spring of 27 would be our next round. So let me address the LIHTC piece of that a little bit.
Well, also, you said the tornado threw you off. I'm curious about that relationship, given that we have the Office of Recovery. Is it because we were trying to move funds was CDA having funds available that they were trying to move over there, or?
No, this would have predated, this goes back into early 25. After the tornado first, the recovery office wasn't even there yet at that point. So it's before that. And again, it's before me too, so I don't want to speak out of context, but a lot of our efforts on housing got diverted because of the tornado relief effort. But, we're back on track in terms of getting our NOFA out, but the next one would issue in the spring of 27. So to the LIHTC, if I may. Obviously, we want to support as many LIHTC projects as possible with CDA funding to fill those gaps to make them potentially successful applications with the state. MHDC has met with us and really has been highly critical of the applications that they received from city projects. And it's really hard to speak to that. I'm just kind of paraphrasing what they said to me. But what we have done is if we've pledged money to a LIHTC project and the LIHTC is not awarded to that project in, let's say, 26, we will allow, essentially extend our award into the next LIHTC funding cycle in the hope that that project could, in fact, be successful on the next round. So you just really mentioned that only because we recognize also how important LIHTC projects are. And when we were as surprised as anyone else when Parkview was the only one awarded, but it's really, it's hard for me to comment on this, the mindset of MHDC in that regard, only that they shared with us they weren't impressed with the project submission. So.
Understood. So you're saying that essentially you can go back and still do the award for last year, and then you're hoping to be able to adjust the timeline for this year?
Say that again, if you would.
You're saying that you can still, you said you're going to do the FY25 awards here, and then you're hoping to adjust your timeline for this year?
I'm not sure I follow.
You
sorry.
mentioned going back and doing something for FY25 in regards to the housing production NOFA, that you were in the process of awarding them, or you're going back and doing it? What did you say?
Yeah, we just weren't able to do a NOFA post-tornado that we would normally do, is my only point. I wasn't there when this happened, Alderwoman, so I'm not sure exactly what the context was. I just know it didn't get done at CDA.
But this year, will we be able to get out the housing production NOFA, or is that timeline?
We're going to award on that NOFA that got stalled, but also we're going to do a new NOFA in the spring of 27 to try to get back on track with our annual process.
Okay. Thank you. I think I will just conclude my questions there for my colleagues. Thank you.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Moak, for being here. I think my colleagues have pretty much touched on most of the things I was looking to ask you about. But one thing I did want to just bring up at this hearing, obviously you probably have all heard that we are very interested in vacancy and reducing the vacancy rates. I know you discussed that the CDA had to shift its priorities a little bit, or a lot of it, simply because of the tornado. But can you just talk a little bit about that we have this vacant building initiative fund? I know some of the funds are funded by fines and fees, I believe. And can you talk about, can you actually just give us an update on how it's funded, and just talk about what your strategy is in this next year to reduce vacancy?
Right. I can speak to it briefly. That funding under the vacant fund has roughly $300,000, as I recall, and it's brand new to me, and I think it was brand new in last year's funding cycle. I have the ordinance in my material somewhere, but it was set up so that fines on property, and I think you were instrumental.
Yeah,
in
I think one of our bills funded increase.
Right, I remember this. Get funneled to some extent to CDA, among other places. And what I can say about it right now, anyways, we haven't spent any of that yet. We don't even have a program set up yet. And that's not really an apology as much as it's just brand new to us and we haven't gotten to it yet. But I think the idea behind that money is to empower maybe grants or some type of work in the community to try to address the vacancy issue in some capacity. But to date, we haven't rolled out a program on that money. And that's where we are.
And I mean, this is one of the, just from our side, I mean, our job is obviously legislators, but we also find ourselves sometimes being involved in implementation just because we want to see it through. So can you talk a little bit about, I know that for those ordinances, and we brought it up in the building division, those positions have actually not been filled. So we're still looking for, I think, the city councilor's office to hire that attorney too, as well as the building division to fill those positions so we can collect more fines. So hopefully you can have more money next year. Yeah. But can you do you anticipate you know, we've talked a lot about your personnel vacancy rate today. Do you have capacity to stand up this program and plans to stand up this program?
That's hard to say. I only in the sense that I don't really have a vision of what we are going to do with this piece of money that's coming to us, you know, what that program's going to look like. And I recall what you were mentioning about the law department getting people, and that was all part of that legislation. So I just don't want to reach and say it's going to be for this or that yet. And matter of fact, I assume what's going to happen with the money that's in the fund presently is that we don't have a program, we're not spending it, and budget will take that money and put it somewhere else. But I'd like to talk to you maybe outside the committee today about what that could look like, because I could use that vision. Obviously, I left a piece of the law department that is working on those positions that you're referring to. But maybe we could sit down and have a meeting about what that could possibly look like. In terms of capacity, it's really hard to comment on that. 300,000, which is amount roughly, is not a tremendous amount of money. It's not $3 million, but I think we'd have to have at least one person probably dedicated to running that eventual program that we roll out there. Sure, I'm gonna figure it out.
I'd be more than
Yeah.
happy to. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I've got a vision, and I know certainly not just my vision, but when we worked on that piece of legislation for services and some of the advocates, you know, it's kind of been one of these chicken or the egg things, because you have to collect the fines to get the funding, but the program could essentially fund itself and more, right? So it's how do we build that capacity internally so we can, you know, build, no pun intended, more capacity and or really work on those issues. So
Yeah.
let's please talk.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, because I'm sort of looking, when I came down to CDA and saw the budget documents for this hearing, I'm like, what's this building? Then I remembered it, you know, but it's just not that far along. But I like the concept, and I'd really like to get down in the detail and figure out what we can do there. We did fund, I want to say last year, we funded a study by the Vacancy Collaborative. It was a one-time effort with the collaborative, who of course I knew back when I was in the law department in problem real estate, to you know, analyze the vacancy issues in the city and issue a report, which they did so. And we're proud of that, but it was more of a one-time thing as opposed to what you're talking about going into the future. But I'd be happy to sit and talk to you about it.
Yeah, and I think it could overlap with some of the things that Alderman, just some of the, you know, do some of those grants go to the CDCs, do some of those, you know, offset, you know, what could be affordable housing. I mean, but the idea is to obviously boost those organizations who have the capacity to do it. So that's all the questions I have for you now, but we will find some time to talk. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
No problem, Alderwoman. And I don't have any questions. Alderwoman Sanye, did you want to maybe just ask one or two? I know you said you had some follow-up. If you keep it quick, to be able to access so we can get to the next individuals. I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Chairman. I do. I just had a question about, in regards specifically to the budget, the Eco Devo sales tax for CDA neighborhood revitalization. For neighborhood revitalization service is proposed at $1,197,000. What is this for? I tried to find the public portal, but it doesn't have any information on it. All I could see is in FY26, there was like $1,144,000, and the city portal shows 0% expended, and there's no information.
That's right. So when I was at CDA previously, 5 years ago, the Eco Devo money was there. It's a sales tax. It's a percentage sales tax. I could have the ordinance somewhere. I can't recite it off the top of my head. But it has historically been used mainly by planning and urban design when they're going out and helping neighborhood and community organizations organize and get capacity. But CDA had never spent any of that money in my former tour. We didn't have any, we didn't spend it. I think under my predecessor, he did spend some of that money on some housing projects, but the idea is to use that money to support neighborhoods and neighborhood organizations coming into being and, being relevant and having capacity. So it's actually interesting on the, we have a EcoDevo board meeting this Thursday, which will be my first introduction of how we might utilize some of that money in conjunction with PDA. And I think the idea is to support some of the newly established neighborhood organizations that planning and urban design have been at the
Neighborhood organizations or neighborhood plans?
I'm sorry, what?
To support some of the newly established neighborhood organizations or neighborhood plans?
It's neighborhood plans I'm not actually sure that I said that right. But it's the planning division helping these neighborhood organizations get set up and have a vision. That's what that money is mainly intended to be used for.
But last year we didn't spend any.
CDA, I don't know, Yeah, I think it's,
So last year we didn't spend any of it, and this year we're not sure how we're going to spend the money for this year. There's no set plan or vision for the funds.
that's correct. Actually,
budget.
meeting on Thursday, discuss what that looks like, what that might look like.
Okay. And this will kind of be my last question, and they're kind of tied together. In FY26, you were budgeted about $1,429, $696 for a salaried position. But in this year, you're at $538, which is about a $400,000 cut, about a 30% decrease. That's actually very alarming to me. I think your department is one of the departments that has just a heavy, consistent workload, and your department not having the workload that it needs results in a lot of consequences that I think are pretty disastrous for the city, and also it leads to all of us hearing constantly that we're a terrible place to do business. Our processes for developers are slow and things like that. And so I'm just curious, is this budget cut, is that because possibly of ARPA dollars, you guys having to reposition some of those staff, or what is the reason for the 30% cut, given that the time for affordable, housing production and things that your department does is probably stronger now than it might have ever been?
Could you come on up, and then this will be the kind of last inquiry, but if you can come up and speak to the mic.
We're not sure what that's a reference to, Alderwoman.
So like specifically just your salary positions within the budget, there's a line in the budget that says salary regular employee. And you can see that last year was at $429,000, and this year is at $1,019. I don't know if you all's book is the same, but it is kind of one of the first lines in salary regular employees.
Which is that CDBG? What is that you're looking at?
It's Fund 510100, and it might be under, it looks like it's kind of under ARPA, and you have it under a few things.
It might be home.
But if you see CDA, ARPA funds, FY27, and then it says salary regular employees as the first category under that.
Okay, for home,
Could you speak into the mic, sir?
okay. Yeah, for the home funding, I think the home grant dropped two or three hundred, a couple $100,000 from last year. So
Maybe page 66.
0.4 to 100,000, I think it went down.
Are you on page 64 where it has total positions?
64 positions from last year, right?
Right now, we're down to
60.
60. Yeah, well,
Or in general, it doesn't even have to be specific to the budget. I'm just curious maybe those positions were moved elsewhere. Was there a 30% cut? I know some other departments will say, well, we had a different source or a different funding line.
no, there will be some grants that were reduced in size, and as through attrition, we just didn't retain one position or so. And like our problem is funding's been steady, but the cost and benefits, everything keep going up. So over time, we have to drop off one or two positions. So there is some slight attrition that way.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Thank you, Director, for being here. Thank your staff also for being here today to present the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move right along. We have the circuit court, which will also talk a little bit about the juvenile division. Whoever from the circuit court want to come up and state your name, and whoever's going to present the budget, or at least do the introduction, and then pass it off to the budget, state your name and who you all have here with you, and proceed into your presentation. And I don't believe there's a slideshow, but just a handout, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I'm Judge Chris McGraw. I'm the presiding judge of the 22nd Judicial Circuit. I was here last year about this very same time. I appreciate the opportunity to present our budget to you. I also want to mention how appreciative we all were. We had an open house at the end of the year last year to show off some of the improvements that this committee approved of the court, particularly our court modernization program. Really appreciate the fact that of all the people that had availed themselves of that opportunity. In fact, I think we're going to do it again this year or next year, or this year, yeah, end of this year, we'll do the same thing. So I brought with me today Judge Katie Fowler. She is the chair of our budget committee. Amanda Sadamku, who is our court administrator and will carry the lion's share of the presentation today. As we've combined both this presentation with our circuit court presentation with our juvenile court, we also brought in J.C. Whelan. He's our assistant court administrator and chief juvenile officer, and then Sean Rapp, our public administrator, who also will provide some color to his budget. We provided the handout as sort of shorten or truncate this presentation, because typically we include all that in that presentation. It basically is sort of the overview of the circuit, the number of people that work there, the many divisions that the circuit court works under. And so instead of going through that all again, and we thought it would be easier and present a better avenue by way of the handout. As I said, I think Department 318, Sean Rapp will be talking about the overview. Just a quick summary as to how we come up with the budgets. Towards the end of the year and early into the next year, the department heads prepare their budgets and submit them to our budget committee, which is headed by Judge Fowler, who the budget committee is made up of a number of circuit court and associate circuit court judges. The department heads make the presentation to the budget committee. The budget committee then makes a recommendation and approval of those budgets, and then submits them to the court en banc for the whole court to review and to approve those budgets. And that was done back in February 17th to 26th. Ms. Sadamku is going to go over with you the overall budget increases for fiscal year 27, the drivers of the increases for fiscal year 27, the electronic monitoring program, the pretrial programming, common expenses for all the 3 buildings, the facility repairs, the human resource project and IT software, and the juror payment per the statutory change. Again, this was something that we talked about at the open house. There was actually our jury supervisor, Joanne Martin, had a presentation as it relates to our juries, and so there'll be some discussion there. Then J.C. Whelan will do the juvenile court, and then Sean Rapp will handle the 318 public administrator budget. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Sadamku to continue the presentation.
Good morning. So as the committee can see, the overall budget.
Can you please introduce yourself to the public?
Sure. Amanda Sadamka, I'm the court administrator for the circuit court. The Department 311 budget, the Circuit Court budget, is proposed for a 7.35% increase. The Department 320 Juvenile Court budget is proposed at a 7.13% increase from last year. The Department 321 Treatment Court budget is a level request from FY26. So discussing the 311 budget, the drivers of any increases or decreases, I'll take up the personnel section first. We are proposing 2 new full-time positions at the Circuit Court, one being a pretrial bond supervisor. This is reflective in the increased caseload for the pretrial office. There is our pretrial services and bond office operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the Circuit Court and with an office over at the Justice Center. This position will help support the line staff in gathering and complete interview information so that the judges who are reviewing initial appearances and bond hearings have all of the necessary information to make good decisions in each case. And then those including any conditions of release or bond or electronic monitoring. The second full-time position that is in the proposed budget is an IT technical support analyst position. I think all the members of the committee that were present at the open house have seen that we've been modernizing the courtrooms as Judge McGraw described. We have now completed 12 courtrooms of the 31 divisions. And with those new amazing technical advances come some issues and fixes, increases in work orders or repairs or really training. The goal of these modernized courtrooms is to increase access to everyone, not just law firms, solo firms, pro se litigants, and so we need a additional technical support analyst to support those, troubleshooting reports and resolve any issues so that the court hearings and all litigants can have equal access to the court. In addition, the personnel section of the budget includes annual raise. The judges have approved a 4.5 cost of living raise. This is separate from what the City Department of Personnel is implementing for the civil service employees. This is just an answer to general cost of living increases with concern about recruitment and retention, as I know all departments have that concern. So that is included in this budget. I would like to note, I think I note this every year, that the state does reimburse the juvenile court salaries. And after the Raise the Age legislation in 2021, that reimbursement has held steady at $4.3 million. So the state does reimburse a good chunk of the juvenile court salaries. Moving on to some of the operational expenses, I think last year we did a lot of discussion on the electronic monitoring program. I can happily say that this year we are leaving that as a level request. Despite seeing more use of electronic monitoring programs, we have implemented less restrictive monitoring conditions rather than the ankle monitor. We continue to try to work with the data that we have and education to trying to reduce the overall cost. So the Circuit Court is very cognizant of how much we have requested in the budget. I did, realizing the, or at least being sensitive to the population over at the Justice Center, and as a comparison, we received data that from July 1st, 2025 to March 1st, the daily average cost to house an inmate at the Justice Center, it was $117.56. The daily cost of electronic monitoring, if on release, if it's court paid, is $6.75 per day. So hopefully we are, we're trying to use the funds responsibly and having safe release conditions for pretrial defendants. The accounts 5660 pretrial programming, there's a slight increase in pretrial services that we're requesting. And if you recall, that those services include housing, job training, employment assistance, behavioral health referrals, and just general wraparound services for defendants. So we have 5 community partners that help us connect litigants with these services from July 2025 to November 2025, so over 5 months. There were 247 screenings and 180 pretrial defendants were enrolled in pretrial contacted services. So moving on to some of the facilities items, we do have our common expenses for the 3 courthouse buildings. And those are buildings that are typically shared with other agencies, city agencies, state agencies. That's a cleaning contract for all the buildings, elevator service, and contracted maintenance. So those are rising costs between 3% and 5% for next year. We have a few facility repair projects, including installing cooling in data rooms, plumbing repairs that have generally increased, and replacing the bird netting over at the Carnahan Courthouse. In account 566013, we do have some new items in software. The court has been really trying to strategically integrate more of the business into the Oracle system. And that would include, we've invested funds in there to do a consultation and design of a learning management system to replace some of our paper functions. So we've gotten a quote, and with the help of ITSA, we'd like to move forward with implementing a LMS system. And the second one is an applicant tracking system. We have added funds to do consultation design work with the city vendor to start work on that software system. And lastly, as Judge McGraw alluded to, in account 5665, legal services, that reflects the statutory increase in juror pay. As you know, that jurors are summoned to court to complete this really important duty, and the legislature has opened up the opportunity for the circuit to review the juror pay. We are considering, it has not been implemented yet, but we'd like to have sufficient funds in order to implement some kind of sliding scale pay schedule to reflect the length of service time for jurors. And although it won't compensate them for their full-time work if they're missing work, but it will supplement their time with the court and in their service. And that concludes my presentation for Department 311. I don't know if you have questions for my portion.
We will just go through them all. Yeah, we'll just go through all of them, and then
Sure.
if folks have questions on the different departments, I'll bring it up.
Great, okay. I'll have Mr. Wine come up.
Good morning. I'm J.C. Wyand. I am the Assistant Court Administrator and Chief Juvenile Officer. Essentially what that means, it's juvenile court and juvenile law is kind of an enigma, so I want to just give a real brief overview of that if anybody's coming at juvenile court for the first time. Essentially what my role is I administer our juvenile court, family court, juvenile division, referred to as 320 in the budget. It's actually at Midtown. It's not downtown. It's on Vandeventer Avenue. It's sort of a large campus. We have multiple courtrooms in the building, as well as in that building housing a very large staff of deputy juvenile officers, business personnel, security officers in our main court building. We also have an annex building holding other deputy juvenile officers and legal staff in our main court building. And then we have our secure detention facility, which houses a number of youth leaders. We don't call them detention workers, or they're youth leaders. Their mission is to do more than just manage the facility. They're trying to make the stay as least restrictive and least traumatic as possible for the juveniles in our juvenile facility. It's like I said, a very large campus with approximately 260, 270 people at any given time out there. And obviously, I'm a little biased. I think it's a very important thing, not to go too much into criminal justice, but you know, as we all know from the research, recidivism is significantly lower if we can impact the life of a juvenile than if we can only reach them when they're an adult. And so, while some people, you know, may not really understand exactly what we do, it is a worthy goal and a worthy endeavor for the individuals and also for our community. The two types of cases we handle at the Family Court Juvenile Division are what most people think of when they think of juvenile court, juvenile law. That would be delinquency or special services cases where that is a juvenile under the age of 18 that has committed a law violation or a status offense. The other type of cases we handle are care and protection cases. And those are cases where, for whatever reason, parents are unable to care for a child or children, and they need some assistance in doing that. And sometimes that involves those children even coming out of the home and working toward reunification with those parents. So whether it's focused on treatment of a juvenile for a juvenile or treatment for a family to reunify a family, those are sort of the core missions of Family Court. I will say I wanted to echo what Judge McGrath said, thanking you all and just our city and our board for being supportive of the courts and for juvenile courts. I've been here for under 2 years, about a year and a half. Prior to this, I have been in this juvenile game, family court administration, for about a decade. And I know how the state funds juvenile courts. I know how some of our brother and sister cities are funded. And from my experience, the support and knowledge and care that the city shows our court system, in particular our juvenile court, is the best in the state. I think that's something y'all should be very proud of. I think our city should be proud of that. And I personally very much appreciate it. As far as our budget this year, obviously Ms. Sadamka spoke about the overall increases court-wide. I don't need to go into that. I do want to just briefly talk about the big picture items for juvenile. Last year I was here, someone asked me a really good question. They said, is there anything not in the budget that could really help juvenile court? That's an important thing. I appreciated the question. I wasn't expecting it, but I thought, well, no, I'm really, that's a really outside the box question in a meeting like this. I thought that was very cool. In thinking about that, you know, thinking about big picture items, obviously our juvenile detention facility is our biggest expense, right? Our biggest liability, our biggest impact zone of the Family Court and Juvenile Division. Prior to me being here, if you remember, there was a rash of breakouts, of escapes from the juvenile detention facility. Prior to my getting here, some significant steps were taken to take care of that. And since well before I was here, there has not been one escape. We're very proud of that and very happy about that. In the course of that, many security people, experts, consults, came through the juvenile division and would look at what are ways we can better secure our juvenile detention facility, because we don't want a juvenile escaping for obvious reasons, for their own safety as well, of course. And in that consultation, one of the major things that every security expert we talked to were our doors. There's still a significant number of wooden doors in the juvenile detention facility. And as you can probably imagine, wooden doors aren't the most secure. They're kicked open. And so really all of our big increases are mainly in our facilities in repairs. But like I said, our big ones are all related to the idea of juvenile detention security. Just to upgrade the doors, that is $120,000 to make sure that our wooden doors are actually secure. We also have an exterior door lock and control upgrade because we are using, in most all doors in the detention a physical lock, a key that goes in the lock. Obviously, again, not the most secure. Those can break. They actually break off often in the locks. This exterior door lock and control upgrade, which is a major increase, that will significantly increase the safety and security of the juvenile detention facility. And then to tie into that, we also have expanded control access readers, door sensors. So instead of they will be the physical keys, it will be a key. And then as well as a control panel to control all of those. Again, that's the facility and grounds, which would be 5638, and then the sort of sub-account is 5620. Those are all of our big asks, if you will, to try to upgrade our detention facility, to make it as good as possible, to continue the good work we've done, to make sure that the juveniles are safe, that our staff are safe, and that the community's safe, and that the juveniles get the treatment that they need. This will not only help with the security of detention, but also response time. The physical locks, the types of doors that we have, with the key lock, if there's a crisis situation and we need an emergency response, it will be so much quicker. Estimates that we could get there at twice as fast, which again is, I think, a really wonderful thing and a very worthy endeavor. The other two major increases are, again, facility related. We've increased emergency repairs from 50,000 to 200,000, and HVAC repairs from 30,000 to 150,000. Those actually just reflect what we actually spent this year on those emergency repairs. As you all probably know, the juvenile court and our detention facility, older buildings, and they just require maintenance. Something that's unique to the juvenile detention facility is it is a detention facility, right? So we have between 30 and 45 juveniles living there at all times. And it's a 24-hour facility. So if HVAC goes out, it can't be well, we'll address that on Monday issue, because we'll have juveniles who would be in, potentially unsafe environments. So those emergency services obviously are, again, the other big increase. Everything else is pretty much a flat budget or even a decrease in costs. We had some computers that we needed to purchase. Cameras, we needed cameras for the annex. Because again, I stated our campus is pretty large, and we had some very old cameras in our annex building that weren't even connected to our security. So we need to get cameras that fully secure all of our campus buildings. And then just the cost of contract and professional service, whether that be the lawyers, the contract lawyers that serve the court, our contract security staff, or our food vendors for the juveniles in detention. So that's sort of, I think, my overview of 320 budget. Again, I very, very sincerely mean that we're grateful at juvenile court, and I've seen other funding mechanisms, and everyone I've dealt with the city understands the importance of juvenile rehabilitation and family reunification, and I think that is just something that the city should be very proud of. And if anyone has questions at the end, I'm happy to answer those. And if I don't have an answer, please, I'm happy to reach out to you and even meet with you to discuss. If you'd like a tour of juvenile family court, I would love to give you. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite Sean Rapp, our court administrator, and give us an overview in the 318.
Thank you, Judge McGraw. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Sean Rapp. I currently serve as the public administrator for the city of St. Louis. I was appointed to this position in March of 2022. Prior to that, I served as an attorney in private practice for about 10 years. I'd like to start by just giving a brief overview of the functions of a public administrator and the various services our office provides, and then I'll move into the budget for the fiscal year and a couple of the changes that we've proposed. The Public Administrator's Office is one of the city's 8 county offices. If you look at the organizational chart for the government of the city of St. Louis, Both the public administrator and the circuit clerk county offices are now consolidated under the jurisdiction of the 22nd Judicial Circuit Court. Both offices, the public administrator and the circuit clerk, are no longer elected positions in our city. They're both appointed by a majority of the judges of the court en banc. I think that speaks to the unique judicial functions of these offices. Public administrators were not one of the traditional county functions in the state of Missouri. The office was first created in 1880 when the General Assembly amended Missouri's probate code to create an office for a public official to serve as administrators for estates of deceased individuals who had assets that had to pass through the probate court. Often these were individuals who did not have a will or an independent executor to serve. Somewhat of a secondary function of the office, the legislature also assigned public administrators the duties of legal guardians for adult incapacitated individuals, as well as conservatorships. And a fourth duty that's not widely used is the public administrator can also serve as a trustee for both private and public trusts. Unlike other county offices, the public administrator's office does not have its own chapter in the revised statutes. Most recorders, sheriffs, prosecuting attorneys' offices are all located in chapters 51 through 59 of the revised statutes. Unique of our office is it's actually located within the probate code itself, and that can be found in chapter 473. Historically, from the late 1800s through a good portion of the 20th century, public administrators' primary duties were administering estates through the probate court. With the evolution of our society's mental health and disability services, the roles of guardians and conservators, both in our courts and our societies at large, has greatly expanded. And presently today, the guardianship appointments make up the lion's share of public administrators' appointments. The City of St. Louis Public Administrator's Office is one of the highest volumes of appointments in the state of Missouri. We currently oversee a rather strenuous caseload of more than 550 adult guardianships that are pending before the probate court. We currently manage 75 conservatorship estates. At any given time, we have between 30 to 50 decedent estates we're administering. I know we don't have time to go into all the office functions, but I did want to highlight our staff. We're a relatively small office, and it's a good opportunity to kind of highlight the good work that the staff of our office does for the city. To begin, we have an office manager that also serves as our settlement clerk. Ms. Kimberly McGowan's been with our office for close to 7 years. She manages a high volume of phone calls, mail, electronic court notices, office supplies, time and attendance, file management, and a slew of other duties. In addition, her responsibilities as the settlement clerk, she has to file over 100 settlements with the court annually. And any attorney that is practicing probate really would appreciate just how valuable that service is. We also have a Deputy Public Administrator of Finance, Mr. Dan O'Malley. He manages our office fiduciary services. Presently, we have over $14.5 million in state assets for both our decedent estates and our conservatorships, which are under our office's control. In 2025, we collected a total of over $1.5 million of other people's incomes, pension benefits, Social Security benefits, and other sources. We have to have a bank account dedicated for each estate. We have over 125 active financial accounts under my name. As the court-appointed fiduciaries, we're responsible for managing individuals' assets, selling personal and real property, filing tax returns, paying bills, and many other fiduciary obligations. Critically important in these roles is keeping careful record keeping, as we have to account for every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. Lastly, but certainly not least, we presently have 4 positions on our guardianship team. We have 4 deputy public administrators of guardianship for personnel classification. They're classified as social workers, but it's more of an expansive role than just social work. Our team of deputy PAs, Patty Berger and Rita Scott, Olivia Tate and Jennifer Endelicato, collectively manage over 140 clients apiece on their respective caseloads. It's a job that largely goes unnoticed, and due to a large part the fact that our clients' personal affairs remain private. They're not on display for the public to see. And I think that's particularly important when you have a public guardian, that you maintain the dignity and the right to privacy of those that we're appointed over. Briefly, our caseload is very unique. We get appointments starting for individuals that are aging out of the children's division, who have a developmental or intellectual disability and have been declared by the courts to be legally incapacitated. The other end of the spectrum, we have appointments for elderly citizens that are experiencing cognitive decline and can no longer safely manage their own affairs. Significant portion of our caseload is for individuals with a severe mental illness. And that's a really critically important service that we provide the city. Individuals that would otherwise be unhoused or in jails under the supervision of a guardian can receive court-ordered medical treatment and get transitioned back into a lesser restrictive environment when it's safe and appropriate. When we are appointed, our office becomes responsible for the management of each client's life. We have to make decisions on where they will reside, their medical care, overseeing their community-based services, and also has a solemn responsibility of making end-of-life decisions. We're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for emergency medical consents and decisions. Our office works with a slew of federal, state, local agencies, hospitals, doctors, nurses, social workers, case managers, community-based service providers, nursing homes, residential care providers, hospice providers, and funeral homes, as well as a slew of others. So it's an enormous responsibility, but for the tasks we're given, I think the office does a tremendous job and is an important resource for our city. Turning to our budget overview for 318, I note that our office is funded by two sources, general revenue as well as a special fund. The salary of the public administrator is funded by general revenue, Fund 1000. If the committee would like a reference, it's on page 47 of the budget manual. With the exception of the salary of the public administrator, all other office expenditures are paid from a special fund, 1111. This includes our staff salaries as well as our operating costs. And again, this cost center for Fund 1111 can be found on page 157 of the budget manual. Our budgeted special funds, 1111, is comprised of two different revenue sources. We receive fees, fiduciary fees, which are charged by our office to the estates which we manage. That's authorized by the probate code. And additionally, the budget director provides for a public administrator subsidy from Fund 1121, which is the Public Safety Sales Tax 2 fund. It's also known as the Prop P funds. In addition to public safety services, there's a corresponding use tax. I believe 25% of that use tax is allocated towards social work and mental health services, and we receive a portion of that through a pass-through fund. And if anyone wants to reference that cost center, I believe that's on page 231 of the budget manual. We're in a somewhat fortunate position this year that we've accrued a little bit of a surplus in our special fund due to revenues that exceeded expenditures in the past couple fiscal years. And we think we're in a good position to kind of address some deferred needs of our office going forward. The office historically was a fee-based office. It didn't become a city-funded office until 2017. In fact, we were one of the last offices in the state that converted from a fee-based office. The office is still somewhat evolving. I think there's two main requests that we're proposing for this upcoming fiscal year. The first is we're asking to add a position of a full-time attorney in our budget. Much of the work of the public administrator's office is legal in nature. We think this position is going to add an important level of stability and oversight to ensure that our office is continuing to meet our legal responsibilities and fiduciary duties as court-appointed guardians, conservators, and personal representatives. There's also a corresponding benefit to the city in that a breach of those duties can result in subsequent liability. State statute does state that the county, or in this case the city, shall defend and indemnify the public administrator for any alleged breach of duty. And that's always a concern that I focus on. The city of St. Louis is unique in that the public administrator for the city represents themselves solely on a pro se basis before the court and the various judicial proceedings we're a party to. Again, this was somewhat a result of necessity. When the office converted in 2017, there wasn't a budget room for the salary of an attorney. The responsibilities of serving as a department head as well as managing a caseload of this size make it very, very challenging to dedicate enough time to focus on all the legal work that's required, and pleadings, court appearances, presenting evidence before the court, examining witnesses. It's quite a challenge, and I think it's going to be a great benefit for our office to have a full-time position that can focus on that. I also am proposing that this position serve as the chief deputy for our office. Currently, we don't have a second in command, and I think that's leaves the office to a certain vulnerability, and that if there's not a person to act as the public administrator, the office could kind of come to a grinding halt, and there's too many services that we provide. You can't start and stop those. So having a chief deputy that can serve in the absence of the public administrator or supplement their role is going to be a big benefit to us. And the state statute does authorize a public administrator to delegate to a deputy who's a licensed attorney the authority to execute inventory, settlements, surety bonds, pleadings, and other documents that are filed in any court in the name of the public administrator, and they shall have the same full force and effect as if executed by the public administrator themselves. So in essence, this role would be able to perform any of the duties required of the office. At least initially, this added attorney position is not going to necessitate an increase in our subsidy request. Actually, we've decreased the subsidy request. Fiscal year 2026, we received $373,000 from the pass-through funds. This year, we're reducing that to $350,000, and that's taking into consideration the surplus funds, and also noting that we're using those for the added position. The other significant request in 318's fiscal year 27 budget pertains to our facilities. Our office is unique in many functions, and one of which is the state statute particularly authorizes the city public administrator to have suitable and convenient offices provided for him or her in the civil courts building of that city. I think that's a byproduct of a bygone era when the public administrator for the city had a lot more political clout than they do now, but they were able to get that added to the statute. The public administrator for the city has been operating out of room 101 of the first floor of the Clyde Cahill Courts building since the 1930s. As our office has expanded over the past 10 years, we've quickly outgrown that space. And we're currently working with the presiding judge in the circuit court to identify a new office space in the courts building. We anticipate there's going to be a number of facility modifications that are going to have to be addressed before a site would be functional for us, including electrical work and network upgrades. Tentatively, we've allocated $40,000 and from our special fund into a facilities and ground services account to ensure that we have funds available in the upcoming fiscal year if the new office site is available. And if we're not able to utilize those funds this fiscal year, depending on that availability, those will essentially remain in the special fund. My knowledge of budgets is still somewhat evolving, but Mr. Payne's office did walk me through that. As opposed to a general fund, any unused funds will go back to the city at the end of the fiscal year, whereas a special fund, since those are allocated for a particular purpose, those will remain in the special fund at the end of the fiscal year. So I don't think there's any detriment to having those available in fiscal year 27. In conclusion, I just want to thank the opportunity to present our office's budget to the committee. Special thanks to Judge McGraw and Judge Fowler and our court administrator, Ms. Sadamka, for all their support of our office. Really been a great source of encouragement, and appreciate the work we do on behalf of the court. And it's critically important to have that backing as we continue to address our office needs. And I'm somewhat excited that we have the opportunity to kind of grow our office, continue to modernize it, and ensure that the office will be available to continue to operate in a professional and capable function in the years ahead. So I thank you to the committee.
That concludes all our presentations, so we welcome any questions.
Thank you, Honorable Judge. We will start with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you all. I really appreciate the really detailed update, and I also just want to thank you for the opportunity with the open house to tour the courthouses and see what you're doing there. I can say that it's really thoughtful upgrades that seem to be really aimed at making everyone's job easier, but also making it much more transparent and accessible to people. I know the legal field is often slow to change in many ways, but you guys have really shown your adaptiveness to really upgrade that building, and it's an old but beautiful building, and so taking care of it is important, but also updating it to make sure it's modern in many ways is also of vital importance. So I don't have any questions. That was a very detailed presentation, so I really appreciate the information today. And just again, thank you for all that you do for our city in helping make sure that everybody has a fair chance under the law.
Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you, Chairman. I would echo the Alderman of the 9th in terms of the gratitude for the work that you all do and your service to our city. My specific question is just your professional services, specifically general funds, treatment court. There's a professional services line that's $384,552 for this proposed budget, which is the same as what was given last year. And my question is just, what do you contract out for this line item, and what services are connected to that?
I'm assuming that relates to the 3 to 5% increase in the professional services.
General funds, treatment court, professional services, yes.
So treatment court, I mean, as you probably know, is funded in a majority as a grant, in grant funds. But so some of the operational budget funds some of the contract work for actual treatment providers. There is a lot of, so mental health, substance abuse treatment, counseling, those type of services are encompassed in there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That completes my questions.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Judge. I actually have a question for the public administrator, and then I have I'll keep my questions brief, and then for juvenile. But just.
Ms. Alderwoman?
Just a quick question, because it seems like this is an important office that not a lot of people talk about. It just strikes me. I mean, it sounds like the bulk of the work is probate court assigned, guardianship, and I don't know if this is something that is measured or there's any kind of reference point, but it would seem to me that a lot of work falls in your office's lap because people don't have wills and documents. I'm seeing a lot of heads shaking. Can you talk a little bit about that? And is there any national data? Do we know if there are more people in the city with less of these documents? Or is it just sort of that this is just something about life that we all should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I would actually state that from a historical perspective, I think that number's beginning to decrease. The advent of estate planning has really evolved the last 30 to 50 years. There's many more non-probate transfer mechanisms, such as beneficiary designations, beneficiary deeds, ways to jointly hold property with rights of survivorship. Having practiced privately and done estate planning, any good estate plan can still go wrong if the assets aren't properly managed or titled. So I think it's inevitably just going to be a function of our society. But with respect to estates, I would actually say it's somewhat of the opposite, where there's probably less decedent estates going through our probate courts. And again, I'm not the probate commissioner, but that's just my kind of experience. Conversely, the number of guardianship filings and conservatorship filings for individuals that are still obviously alive has greatly expanded and continues to expand. I know that there's a statewide kind of crisis with our Department of Mental Health and getting people into state forensic hospitals, and it's a long bed list. And so I think majority of what we're focusing on now is trying to work through the mental health segment of our population and managing kind of a broken mental health system. But it is a statutory function of our office to serve as personal representatives. The courts all can appoint a private attorney to fulfill those positions as well. Sometimes it depends on the value of the estate, if the estate's going to have enough funds to pay for those private services. But I know with Medicaid estate recovery notices, they have been using a private attorney just to kind of keep the caseload off of public administrators' offices throughout the state. And those are cost recovery that are required by state law, that somebody passes away that was on Medicaid and they have a house, which is not a countable resource for qualifying, but they have a lien on it when they pass, and the state can foreclose on that. And but it's we have a good benefit in our probate court, in that our probate commissioner served as the public administrator prior to her ascension to the bench. So it's good to have that, and from my perspective, that the court really understands the roles that our office does and tries to make our caseload as manageable as it can, because it knows kind of the resources are stretched in many ways. So not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did. It's just, again, I mean, I know this is your world, but it just strikes me as that everything that doesn't have essentially a place or a function, but what comes through you if they don't have
Through
those
the probate
documents.
court, yes.
And I think that's aptly, it's an underserved in the legal community. And because it's underserved in the legal community, it involves mostly those that can't afford lawyers fall to the public administrator. The public administrator then acts as a ward many times in protecting the assets of people that don't have a lot of assets. But, and because of that, they can't afford lawyers to do that. In the past, there were probably lawyers willing to do it, but there are no longer lawyers willing to do that. As something that Mr. Rapp said is that in his presentation, we are going to move his office. We've been working on moving his office, and what we would like to do, or in the planning stages, is move it up onto the 10th floor, so it'll be next to the probate court, so they could interact much easier together.
Great, thank you. And that's all the questions I have for you. I do have a question about juvenile court real quick. Thank you. And I do want to echo the gratitude from my colleagues. Thank you all for being here, persisting with our many questions. Just curious, can you just talk about, we've talked about investing a lot in youth, obviously, and that there can be a relationship between what we see in the courts, the circuit court and the juvenile court. Can you just talk about the rate of recidivism in the past year, 2 years, if that has increased, decreased, and how your staffing maybe has affected some of those numbers?
Absolutely. And again, I was really excited. You had such a very philosophical question for Mr. Rapp. Those are the really fun ones to answer, right? Not technical budgets. We're talking like juvenile philosophy, and philosophy translates to impact, right? That good measures, good thoughts equal changed lives. And I think understanding that sort of thing is the first step in tackling the problems that we have. And so just generally speaking, recidivism for juveniles, and this is a very spitball number. It varies from year to year and a lot of different variables, but more than 3 to 5 times more recidivism from adults to juveniles. Juveniles, if we can get to them, we can put them on a different path so much easier than when someone is just more practiced in their patterns, in their habits, right? And so that is one of the just really important, crucial things about juvenile court. Now, specifically, how's that looked in the last couple years? Unfortunately, I would say recidivism has gone up significantly because of Raise the Age. So that's sort of a numbers game, because now we have, again, I think when you can impact and have an intervention and treatment, the younger, the better you have of steering a juvenile on to a different path. Now, 17-year-olds are under our jurisdiction. So they are significantly more difficult to impact, I would say, than 16, 15, 14, and so forth and so forth. So we've actually, I think, generally seen recidivism go up because in the last several years because of Raise the Age. So we've probably seen a spike, and then it probably go down a little bit as we then have to change our systems, right, and our philosophies, because we're not just trying to impact 16, 15, 14, 13-year-olds. We're also trying to impact 17-year-olds. Part of that, we have one of the really interesting things has been detention programming, rethinking what that looks like, because what is a worthwhile, engaging detention programming for a 16, 15, and 14-year-old just looks a little different than for a 17, 16, 15, and 14-year-old. And so we've had to be creative, we've had to be flexible, but we've had to really work to now serve an entirely demographic of youth, that 17-year-old. So I will just say, it is just such a worthy endeavor because it works. Training DJOs, we have a wonderful DJO trainer, and we have 2 separate departments and great chief deputy juvenile officers over those departments. I try to step in and train DJOs as much as possible. And one of my favorite things when I start is to say, this is like actually a really fun job, because you're going to see an impact made, I mean, maybe 50% of the time. And we don't get that in criminal justice and courts and the law very often. But if you can say, boy, I impacted this juvenile's life and I got to go to this kid's graduation, that's awesome. That's why we do this. That's like a tangible win, a tangible thing that can keep you going on the bad days when maybe we don't have those successes. And I think that is when people think about juvenile court. I think, yes, there are obviously times when we don't have success in turning around a juvenile's life, but the successes are there and they're real, and it's just a really cool thing.
Well, thank you. And I don't have any other questions, but I appreciate your passion and enthusiasm and care.
And very, very sincerely, if anybody would ever like a tour of family court, I would be honored, and I would love to give you.
Sure, it sounds like we got a committee field trip.
I look forward to it
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. If you could send me your email, the individual over juvenile court, that would be great, because I would definitely love to take a tour and maybe set up, see if folks from the budget committee and just the rest of the board of aldermen would be willing to do that. I have no questions. I do want to thank you, presiding judge, for being here, and all the amazing staff. I've learned a lot about the public administrative office. I feel like we probably talked about it a little bit last year, but not as in depth, and learned a lot. And like the alderman from the 9th said, I want to thank you, honorable judge, for inviting the board to come over and see some of the things some upgrades that have happened at the courthouse, and just appreciate all the great work and the collaboration that you all do with this board of aldermen. Any way that we can be a help, please continue to let us know. So thank you all for being here today.
Why don't we let's try to set that up with you, Amanda, the tour of juvenile court. How about that? Do you have Amanda's? I'm
not sure if I have Amanda's.
I have it from the last tour.
Okay, I was going to tell you, whoever I've been reaching out to schedule these budget hearings, but somebody should have it on the city website. But yes,
We'll get that set up.
absolutely. Would definitely love to take that tour. Thank you all. Hopefully it's not raining as much. I seen you had a little wetness, presiding judge, when you came over. So thank you guys for being here. With that, I will take a motion to go into recess until 12 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 9th. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the Budget and Public Employees is back from recess. I'll take a motion to come back into session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderwoman from the 6th, that we come back in session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're back from our recess, and we will hear from SLDC. So the director or CEO president, you can come on up, state your name, introduce anybody you may have here with you, and then start your presentation.
All right, well, thank you. Good morning, and thank you, members of the Board of Aldermen, for the opportunity to be here today. I'm joined here today by SLDC COO Stephanie Greasy and Deputy CFO Chris McGuire. So for those I have not yet had the chance to meet, my name is Stephen Westbrooks, and I'm currently the CEO of SLDC. And I took this role because I believe deeply in the future of the city of St. Louis and the importance of building an economic development system that is strategic, disciplined, collaborative, inclusive, and capable of producing visible results for residents and businesses across the city. Over the past about month and a half, I've spent significant time listening to my senior leadership team, staff, developers, neighborhood leaders, institutional partners, and many of you to better understand both the challenges and opportunities facing St. Louis today. And one thing has become very clear, that the city does not have one singular development challenge, but different parts of the city are experiencing different market conditions, and our approach must be flexible enough to respond accordingly. That understanding has shaped the strategic framework we're developing at SLDC that I'm calling Create, Accelerate, and Support. In areas where markets do not yet function, SLDC must help create the conditions for investment through land assembly, coordinated capital deployment, and focused catalytic activity. In areas where markets exist but are underperforming, think downtown, we must accelerate progress by reducing development friction, improving predictability, and strengthening the development environment. And in areas where markets are functioning, we must support and strengthen long-term resiliency by expanding access to capital, supporting businesses and entrepreneurs, and broadening participation and growth. Importantly, this framework aligns closely with several priorities identified in the mayor's strategic framework document, including vacancy reduction, downtown revitalization, neighborhood recovery, ease of doing business, operational modernization, and the responsible deployment of catalytic investment capital. Our work at SLDC is ultimately about building a more coordinated and execution-oriented development system for the city of St. Louis, one that can help stabilize neighborhoods, attract investment, strengthen corridors, and position the city for long-term growth. And that's why today's budget discussion is so important. A responsible and disciplined approach to budgeting is not separate from our strategy, it's what enables our strategy. It's how we build the operational backbone, deploy resources intentionally, strengthen accountability, and create the capacity necessary to advance these priorities in a sustainable and measurable way. So with that, I'll transition to our Deputy CFO, Chris McGuire, who will share an overview of our fiscal year 2027 budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here today to present the St. Louis Development Corporation 2027 budget. My name is Chris McGuire. I don't know if I met any of you in person, but I've been around for 36 years over at the Development Corporation. It's been my honor to serve there. You should have in your possession the full budget that was delivered, I suspect, correct? And I'm going to be going over, it'll be focusing on page 2, which is the budget itself. As you know, St. Louis Development Corporation is the development arm, the umbrella development arm is for the one-stop shop development here in the city of St. Louis. I'm going to start on page 2 and go through those numbers. The total budget for fiscal year 2027 is just over $14 million. That represents a decrease of like $1.4 million from 2026. That's a 9.2% decrease. The budget in 2026 was 15.5. My revenues that I'll show that are on that page, they're broken down into 3 categories. The community development block grant dollars, those are dollars that we get through the CDA. The agency funds, those are dollars that we make on things that we do, the fees that we earn on the services that we provide. And then there's a catch-all category, other revenues, and that mostly includes outside funding. It can be philanthropic, such as MasterCard. It can be other federal funds like ARPA. It can even be state funds. The budget, the revenue budget, of course, if the overall budget went down by 1.4, your revenues and your expenses are going to go down by 1.4 because we do have a balanced budget. The 3 categories, the CDBG revenues, they decreased by $60,000. Just to clarify that, the overall funding, the CDBG overall funding did not decrease. We just used $60,000 less out of admin and used it on what I call brick and mortar, actual projects, and we took that out of admin. The agency contributions basically stayed the same, with one big exception. The Port Authority contributed an additional $500,000 this year. And then the other revenues decreased by 1.8, close to $1.9 million. That's due really to the conclusion of the ARPA program. Please note that in the budget itself, I said the conclusion of the ARPA program, there is 6 months of funding in the 2027 budget. That'll be from July 1 through December 31st. If we flip over to, if you look down to the expense side, as revenue, as I said, the total budget is decreased by 1.4, and that follows as such. The $9,663,000 of personnel costs, that decreased by 1.5, just a hair over 1.5. Those are ARPA-related staffing concluding in quarter 2 of 2027. The budget that you have in front of you supports 87 positions. That is a decrease down from 105, and we gained that increase, we accomplished that increase by reducing 8 budgeted positions. There were 12 vacant positions. We took 8 of those out of the budget, so you only remain 5 funded open positions. And then there were an additional 10 positions that were funded, and people were in those positions in fiscal year 26. They left the organization. We did not choose to fill those positions, and we removed those from the table of organizations. On the certified STL, that's a $300,000 part of our budget. We saw an increase in that of $170,000. That was because we, you'll see up above, I said that we reduced 10 positions. 3 of those positions were in the certified STL, and we engaged a consultant to help process those certifications. So you see the increase on the consultant side and the decrease on the staff side. All the other expense categories, whether it's workforce compliance, business development, travel, training, supplies, equipment, office contracts, office contractual, other, the consultants, all those either remain the same or decreased. And we believe because we believe that that's going to happen because we see less employees, right? So you should see a decrease in some of those activities. We looked at the actual expenditures through April of 26, made our projections through the December of 26, and that's how we arrived at our decreases in your other expense categories. That's what I have for the budget. If there's any questions, we're glad to answer them, and if you want to look at it and get back with me, that's good too.
All right, starting in order of seniority, Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. Really appreciate the detail here. Looking through it, I don't believe I have any questions, but I do appreciate the work you all do, and I just really encourage you to reach out if we can ever be of support. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm not speaking now. I was just saying, I appreciate the work you do and encourage you to reach out if we can ever be of support. Don't have any questions.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Thank you, Chairman. I would echo the gratitude that was voiced by Alderman Browning for sure. It's been very interesting seeing SLDC's role and the ways has changed throughout the year and all kind of additional tries and wins and challenges that have come with that. So thank you. My question is, one of my first questions is just, you answered a lot of them with the, just kind of explaining the changes in staffing. So thank you for getting, for putting that information in your presentation. It is $300,000 for NWBE contract certification office. And it says, and it includes St. Louis County. And I was just curious what that was in reference to. It's on page.
The 300,000?
It's on page 4, I think. In your pack.
Yes, ma'am. That is, that's made up of 2 contracts, B2G for some software for them, and then the Porter Brown contract. That's the one I referred to as there were some reductions in the staff, and we engaged Porter Brown to carry out that certification process.
Right. Okay. I understand. Yep. Because we switched. Okay. I understand. Could you just talk a little bit about the EcoDevo tax subsidy and how SLDC utilizes that?
The
EcoDevo tax subsidy?
So again, that's an estimate that comes through, I think Don Rowe stands before the committee there, and based on what our discussion with him, I think it's down a little bit. At one point, it was $1 million, but this year, and he didn't say he had a firm number, but he expects it to be at 550.
And this is the fund that is used for neighborhood transformation managers?
I'm sorry.
Okay. And then I also noticed under major, this is for a Port Authority specifically, for major projects, contracts, and services, in FY '27, there was requested and proposed $800,000, and I was just wanting some additional context on that.
Do you have some?
What was the question? Sorry.
It's a request for $800,000 for major projects, contracts, and services for the Port Authority.
What page is that?
Our book is different from y'all's packet. Let me see. It's 243 in our budget book, but the budgeted special fund, Port Authority Development Ordinance. I don't think you guys have it in here. It's just in the general budget under Port Authority budgeted special fund.
Okay. So that wouldn't be ours. Is that what you're saying?
I just don't think you pulled it out. I don't think you pulled it as a highlight in here, but it's in your budget. It's just not in this packet. Did you guys, I'm sorry, is it better if someone specifically from the Port Authority, maybe it's a little bit, it's very specific.
Well, I don't think there would be something that, so this is the entirety of our budget. So there shouldn't be something that would be reflected elsewhere that is in our budget that we're not presenting in our budget.
Is the Port Authority under SLDC?
Is the Port Authority under SLDC?
Sure.
So it is, but we don't get all of the revenue that the Port Authority generates. We get a portion of that revenue. We make a request for a portion of that revenue every year.
Okay. I just thought since the Port Authority fell under SLDC, you might have that information, but I can request this separately.
But maybe what's the specific question? I don't think I've understood.
It was for major projects, contracts, and services. There's a line item for $800,000. That's really all it says, and I was just curious what that was for. But I can pull it and send it in an email and discuss it there.
Okay, maybe we should do that.
Okay.
That's all my questions.
Alderwoman Velasquez?
Thank you, and thank you for being here. I have a couple questions, and I don't know if it's who best is to answer them. Um, I think, so Alderman Aldrich and Alderman Sanye and I and a couple other alder people have been working on updating or seeking to update the MWBE ordinances. I think a question that we've been looking at is we are requesting a threshold analysis so we can actually be informed in updating these ordinances. And I don't know if that has been formally requested, but would like to see if that has been, if there is budget or for that, or where that would come out of, and if it is part of what's being considered. I know that you have budgeted for MWBE compliance, but we're kind of in this pause state of we have to update the ordinances. We really don't have the data to really effectively update the ordinances, but we need some funding to get the data so we can update the ordinances. You're shaking your head, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I would like to.
And if you could just state your first and last name.
Sure. Stephanie Greasy. I'm with SLDC. And yes, we have funding for that effort. We need to kind of revise how we describe that in the budget, but we do have funding for it. We initially approved the contract in August, and it's still underway. We're actively working with Griffin Strong now to provide the data for them to do the threshold analysis. So we are still committed to all of that.
Perfect. And where is that reflected in this budget?
It is not. So that is,
Okay.
we will need to clean that up a little. But
Okay.
Yep, that's a note that we had coming into the meeting.
I think that'd be great, and I don't want to put my colleagues on the spot, but I think just there's going to be a lot of questions, obviously, and folks want to see the program back and, of course, strengthened.
Yep.
So at least to know that it's budgeted, we have some movement, we're gathering the data, that process is underway, so then we can do the other things would be really helpful.
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you.
I think other than that, I don't have any more questions. Thank you. And thank you all for being here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. I just want to thank you and your team, and thank you, Mr. CEO. I know you're new on the squad, so appreciate all the work you're doing. One of the things I would just hope is, I worked with the previous administration, Mayor Jones, and Otis, previous president, was very supportive of it, that we continue to move the eminent domain and blight process around the absent landlords, mainly Paul McKee, around the NGA neighborhood in St. Louis Place and JVL, so that we as a neighborhood in the city can try to figure out how do we start to develop those. I know there's already been some initial steps around maybe the first 80 or 90 parcels, which that's going to take some time, and then the next one. But as long as we keep that ball rolling, whatever I could do to be a help, I'm definitely honored to make it happen. All right, with that, seeing no more further questions, I will entertain a recess until 1 p.m.
So moved. Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we go into recess to 1 p.m. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are back from recess. We have two more items of the day. Excise is here. We have our commissioner in front of us, and then the
Take a
last.
motion to return.
Oh, yes, I would like to take a motion to return from recess.
I move that we return from recess to continue.
Second. Moved by the Alderman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman of the 14th. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So again, we're back from recess. The last item of the day will be excise. Do we have the commissioner here? Well, there'll be one item, and then the last item of the day will be the committee discussion around subpoena requests directed to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners for FY27 budget. With that, we will go ahead and get started. Commissioner Miles, please come on up.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'd like to introduce our Liquor Control Supervisor, Miss Gwendolyn Cherry Sims. She's actually our budget expert too, knows a lot more about it than I do. But our budget, as you well know from past hearings, is pretty straightforward. It's a line item. We don't have any kind of grants or anything other than the general revenue to fund us. So I guess with that, did you want to get started with the PowerPoint? Okay.
Just say next slide, and she'll go to that next slide.
Okay, next item. Okay. Let me see here. This is our mission. Our mission is to meet the needs of the stakeholders, which are licensed applicants, public officials, law enforcement personnel, licensed liquor establishment, neighborhood groups, through fair and unbiased application of Ordinance 71819 that governs the administration of licensed liquor establishments. This requires an initial investigation of all applications and application hearings, and upon licensing, monitoring of licensed liquor premises to ensure compliance. Conduct hearings regarding violations, which could result in revocation or suspension of the license or a monetary fine. Next item, please. Overview and functions. Our core licensing and monitoring. The essential function of the office is to license liquor establishments under rules established by the Board of Aldermen and approved by the mayor in 2024. The division is then responsible for monitoring activity through routine inspections, which serve as a primary method for discovering violation. Another critical tool is a collaboration of other city agencies, which is facilitated in the accomplishments of all involved. The agencies we are most frequently involved with are, the key one is the building division. If there is a problem with a place and it's involving liquor violation, if we can establish that, bring them in, have a hearing, fine them or suspend them, whatever, and give that to the buildings division, then they can make a recommendation for a kind of. You want me just to hold it? Okay, then they can make a recommendation for a condemnation of the premises. We also work with the city councilor's office, which advises us as to the legality of what is going on in the community with the liquor licenses and new issues arising. We have kept pace with the extra workload brought about by the recent ordinances and adapted to new responsibilities on licensed liquor establishment by this year's laws banning gambling devices and THC-infused products on the premises. I'd like to digress there for just a couple of minutes. The gambling devices, obviously, everybody's aware that those are illegal. The state tried to make them legal so they could be put under the jurisdiction of the Missouri Department of Gaming. That was not accomplished. That was defeated in the Missouri Senate. So they remain as kind of an outlier in illegal gambling devices. The THC-infused products, very confusing as to what is and is not allowed. But last Friday, the governor signed a bill into law that pretty well establishes that the only places allowed to sell THC-infused products of any kind would be licensed marijuana dispensaries. And why a critical aspect of any job is attitude. We have a very small office and try to maintain a positive attitude. And I continue to receive accolades from the public as well as public officials on how well our employees do in cooperation with everyone we encounter. Okay, our initial budget request for fiscal year 2027 was $887,172. The proposed that was approved was $820,007, and that was we asked for 2 more positions to deal with the gambling devices and the THC infused products. We were allotted 1, so I'm actually quite happy with that in this economic climate that we're facing. I guess that's about it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
All right, in order of seniority, start with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate it. I think you did a pretty good explanation of the additional burden that's being placed on your office. And like you, I'm glad that you're getting an additional employee to deal with applications and regulation of THC. So I don't have any questions. I think you covered my main concern, which is that was placing an additional burden on your office, and it sounds like it will, but you're getting some additional help.
Yes, sir, and I think the more clarification of the laws, the overview of the laws, I think we're going to be a lot better off, and that's starting to come into focus a little better.
Well, as always, government's a little behind on
Yeah, I know.
newest things, and so hopefully we'll get some additional clarification, but it seems like we're getting a little bit more right now, and
Yeah.
Hopefully that's helpful to you as you do your job.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate you being here and you putting together this presentation. You have a hard job and that your department does a lot, and sometimes you don't always get the credit for a job well done when it's a hard job. So thank you. I don't have any questions for you right now.
Thank you very much,
Alderman Devoti.
I don't have any questions, Commissioner, but thank you for all of your work. It's much appreciated, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No questions. I am glad to know that you guys got the extra position. I know you're a small, mighty staff, so I'm sure that additional manpower will help. I don't think sometimes people know how much work you and all the other staff members have to do when it comes to excise, when you're talking about making sure that every department is, or not every department, businesses that sell alcohol have to go through you all, and that's a lot. So just thank you for your work, Commissioner, and for your staff work on this, the work that you guys do in the excise department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the Board of Aldermen for all the support that we've gotten from the Honorable Board of Aldermen.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will take a motion to go into recess to 1:30.
Moved.
Thank you.
If you could remove your motion, Alderwoman.
I remove my motion.
I'll take a motion to go to recess to 1:20.
I move that we go into recess until 1:20.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to take a motion that we return from recess.
So moved.
It was moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, last order of the day, the last item that is on our agenda for today is a committee will discuss a subpoena request directed to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners for FY27. And with that, so today the committee will discuss a subpoena to send to the Police Board of Commissioners to come in front of the Board of Aldermen to present their FY27 budget. The point of this is, so there was an email sent out to one of the police commissioners, Ms. Jenkins, back on April 23rd, requesting that the police board comes in front of the budget committee to present their budget. Just like every department has done so far, they have come in front of this budget committee to present either line item by line item or the requests that they have within their budget to the city of St. Louis. We know that the police budget makes up, it's the largest part of the budget, as well as it's the largest part of public safety. And we just want to, from this budget committee, as we have done last year and every other year, hear from the board to figure out how to best move forward. Before I go to my colleagues, Madam Clerk, could you read the request to the police board and commissioners?
By the authority of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, pursuant to Article 4, Section 8 of the Charter of the City of St. Louis, Chapter 3.06 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis, and the authority granted the St. Louis Board of Aldermen Budget and Public Employees Committee by Resolution 1, adopted by the Board April 21st, 2026. You are hereby directed and required to appear Wednesday, May 27th, 2026 at City Hall, 1200 Marcus Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63103 at 12 o'clock p.m. in the Kennedy Room, to be examined by the committee in regard to the fiscal year 2027 budget proposal, and to produce those documents, records, and items used to formulate the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department fiscal year 2027 budget request, and you are not to depart without leave of the committee. The Budget and Public Employees Committee has chosen to exercise its subpoena power, and the signatures required under Chapter 3.06 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis have been made below. Failure to appear and to produce the documents, records, and items as directed may result in your being taken into custody and brought before the Budget and Public Employees Committee under writ of bodily attachment as provided in Article 4, Section 8 of the Charter of the City of St. Louis and Chapter 3.06 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis.
Before I go to committee members again, this is not to necessarily be confrontational, but to ensure from this budget committee that I'm so grateful for my colleagues. We spend hours and hours and hours of time of hearing from different departments. We also go into the community. We just had a meeting this past week at Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club. We will have another one this Wednesday at the International Institute hear from the community. But it's important to make sure that we hear from every department. And with the police department being the biggest part of our budget, I think it's incumbent that they are being transparent and they come and they present the requests that they put into the budget, like many departments have, to explain exactly why they are asking for the amount that they're asking for. So before any vote is taken, I will open it up for discussion to any committee members, starting in seniority with Alderman Browning.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I don't think this is an action to be taken lightly. I think this is a testament to the time we're in right now and the conflict that we have. To be clear, that conflict is not between the men and women who serve in our Metropolitan Police Department and us. We believe, or at least I can speak for myself and say that I believe that the people who put their lives on the line every day and work to protect our city are doing important work that they should be paid well for, and we should show appreciation for them when they do that good work. My issue is with the Board of Police Commissioners that has been state appointed, has not been elected by the people, laying claim to taxpayer funds that also have to pay for our streets to be paved, our trees to be trimmed, the lighting in the street to be replaced, our sidewalks to be fixed, our health department to operate. I mean, I could go on and on about the different aspects of public safety that our city departments cover. And then there's just the rest of the services too. It's an item of health that our trash gets. It's a matter of extreme importance that all of our city departments receive the adequate funding to operate, including the police. But we cannot do our jobs and allocate what the police need to do their jobs without input from their leaders and from people who know their budget. And just as we would do with any department, we ask them to come in front of us and share their needs, share their priorities, answer questions in a transparent process. And that is the way government is supposed to work. And that's not the way government is working right now. So I think this action that we're taking today is necessary, but it is unfortunate. And I hope that we can have a de-escalation and further communication in the future so that we can provide what we need to so that everyone can go do their jobs and keep this city safe. I really appreciate the initiative taken by Chairman Aldridge and the wonderful questions and input given by the members of this committee as we've discussed this. I think it's something we're all taking very seriously and something that none of us really want to do, but we're doing it in the interest of our city and its residents.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Thank you, Chairman. I think anyone who follows the budget process for the city of St. Louis knows that it's pretty customary. This is my third year serving on the budget committee, and it makes the first year that we've not had someone come speak to us about the police department and their budget. I think that's extremely concerning for several reasons, but I can tell you that one thing that's directly impacted my residents right now is within the South City neighborhood, we have an outdoor shooting gun range. And we're having conversations about how that money needs to be moved into budget. Can it be moved into budget? What's the mechanism that it can go? And it's very difficult to get clear answers. And meanwhile, I have children that are hearing guns and residents that are hearing businesses that are operating, and they're hearing shootings that are taking place. And while I've been able to get some correspondence and some answers from folks about kind of the reasonings and the changes in operations that have shifted this, the fiscal matter to address the issue and to put some additional sound barriers at the outdoor shooting range is still not clear. And it's actually something that you can see be a topic of discussion at the police board commission meeting. And so for me, this action, I know it can be something that media is going to blow up. And I think, my concern is that people are going to misinterpret this for what it is. This is elected leaders just asking for democracy. I wish that we did not have to ask for democracy via subpoena, but this is elected leaders of the Board of Aldermen who are responsible to the people of St. Louis, who are supposed to be able to explain to them the fiscal matter and why this dollar that is your dollar goes here and for what purpose. And there are some clear barriers and challenges in doing that right now. And so I'm very supportive of this initiative because I think that we have to do everything we can to fight for democracy. And I think this is one of the worst examples we have right now in the city of St. Louis, that there's not democracy, that an area of our budget that composes the majority of our budget, we don't have anyone to come before us and speak to us. I think that's extremely alarming, and I think that the public and the people of St. Louis deserve better. They deserve transparency. They deserve answers. And as their elected leaders who represents them, I think that we have a responsibility to go and get those answers by any means necessary. And so I just want to make sure that I make that clear on my record, that that is how I feel about this decision. That is a necessary flag for democracy. That I think it's really important that any of us who care about democracy and are concerned about the unprecedented trajectory that we're going in, that most of us would agree is not for the betterment of people or for a better, efficient government, that we do whatever we can to prevent us from going down that road, or to at least be as public, as many of us be as public and vocal as possible to say that we don't support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to echo my colleagues. I don't think any of us take this decision lightly. I certainly do not. And to what Alderwoman Sonier was saying, I think what's important to realize is that the budget is actually taxpayer money. And so we, the people, elected us to ask questions, to govern, and part of governing is being good stewards of the dollars they work hard to get and to support our community. And so this is basic, frankly, basic government 101. We have a budget. We should know what's in the budget. You as taxpayers should also know what's in the budget and why. And in a time where we're looking at hard decisions and what to cut and what to fund, it becomes even more important that we understand what's in our budget and the people understand and have a right to know what they're paying for. And so this is, again, a decision that none of us take lightly, but it is our duty as stewards of taxpayer money to understand and ask and advocate for a budget that meets the needs of the people who live in the city and who elected us to represent them in this city. And so that's what we are doing here today, and I thank the chairman as well for pushing to do this. I think we want to make sure that we are being as responsible with the responsibility that has been given to us, and that's what we're doing here today. Thank you.
Alderman Devotie.
I don't have anything to add.
With that, I do also thank my colleagues. I know this has been ongoing conversation around, what we can do to ultimately just hear from one of the departments that is asking for a lot of money but not coming in front of us. I think, as my colleague said, none of us take this. This was kind of the last step that we wanted to go. This is serious, but we also feel it is extremely important to make sure that there's transparency in the process, in the budgetary process. Alderwoman from the 6th said, as taxpayer dollars are being spent, no matter if it's police department, no matter if it's our refuse department, our street department, or slate, that we know exactly where every dollar is being spent. So with that, I would take a motion to accept the subpoena on behalf of the Budget and Public Employees Committee to be submitted to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners for FY27 budget.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sonier.
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderman Devotie.
Present.
Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
4 aye votes, 1 present.
With that, we have approved the motion to send a subpoena request directed to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners to come in front of the Budget Committee on May 27th to present their FY27 budget. Madam Clerk, any written testimony?
We have none.
Any announcements? Only announcements that I have is Wednesday, again at 6 p.m., the Budget and Public Employees will be taking this on the road again. We will be heading to the International Institute to hear from the community as the budget is being presented to the community so that they can weigh in on it. All members was present. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It was moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th that we adjourn. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.